The following is a White Roof Radio Motoring File special audio presentation. Interview with Mike Peyton, Chief Motor, MINIUSA.
Gabe from MotoringFile, and I'm here with the Chief Motor, and I think this is one of the very first conversations that you've had with folks. And
for sure.
A little bit of your coming out party, if you will.
Yeah.
I'd like to think it's your coming out party to the enthusiast crowd of MotoringFile, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely.
So I guess, there's a lot that I'd love to cover, but I'd really first love to talk about the brand.
Okay.
And I know there's been, when we go back to 2001, 2002, there's so many owners that are still mini owners or sort of once mini owners, always mini fans that remember those years as just amazing from not just a product standpoint, but from a marketing standpoint.
Yeah.
And the brand is shifted and evolved since then. And there's been a lot of talk around, where it's headed. And I'm curious to know from your crystal ball and what you see ahead of us, what's in front of the mini brand in the U.S.
Yeah, well, U.S. and globally, because I think the same statements you're making are that the brand is also trying to shift, evolve, continue to be relevant from a global perspective. But then definitely in the U.S., it's it's definitely a different industry here than almost anywhere else in the world. And so as a brand, I think it's causing us to look at what the new opportunities are, look at what has made us successful in the past. Because I think what we've heard a lot, certainly what I've heard a lot, is you mentioned, back in 2002, people would think about Mini, and it was everything from, I love my Mini and I love customizing my Mini to things about the brand where we were always known for guerrilla marketing and all these different tactics.
Cars on top of SUVs.
Everything, exactly.
Yeah.
And I think, I certainly believe this, and I know globally with Vern Korber, our new global head, we've got to get back to that and kind of re-embrace the cool, fun, sometimes quirky aspects of the brand, because I think we got to a point where we got a little too focused on the creative class, a little too focused on, I don't know. Some people could say we maybe got a little uptight, and I think that's a really important part now. Is we got to get back to the fun part of the brand. We got to get back to the go-kart handling, all the things that people have come to love and what they expect from Mini.
How do you see that in correlation to the way the automotive industry is changing? We've got autonomy starting to kind of seep into the automotive landscape. Obviously, electrification, which Mini's a part of, and the immense growth of SUVs.
Yeah. So I think it's interesting that at the core. And then this is the one thing that I've really been, talking about our team a lot, is we got to stop thinking like a small car brand and think more like Mini. And that's the thing, when you think about what has made us successful or why people have been drawn to Mini, it's been that fun to drive aspect, all those things, and just their passion, for the brand, the passion we have for the brand. And that, I think, we need to get back to kind of differentiate ourselves. Because at the end of the day, yes, we're in a truck and SUV market in the U.S. We're not competing against the guy that wants to tow his trailer with the F-Series.
Yeah.
We're not competing against the family that's buying the Suburban and all their kids and all the sporting equipment. What we're focused on is the people that they want to have fun. They want something that's differentiated in the market. And they also want something that they can... that's familiar to them on what they can expect from the brand. And so I think that is still what we need to use as our differentiating point in the market, is that we are all about, you get into a Mini, anybody that's driven any of the Minis, you get in there, it puts a smile on your face, it feels substantial, it's got that premium feel. And I think there's a lot of those elements that still is what we need to
How do you see new product really kind of fulfilling that?
We got to make sure we're relevant in the marketplace, for sure. With Mini, particularly in the U.S., we are looking at a path that's focused on electrification and what that looks like. The other avenue is definitely with internal combustion. We need to make sure that we're still relevant in that as well. Uniquely, it's certainly been one of those statements we've made, particularly for the U.S. market, that we do feel we need both, for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, and I think that's one thing that caught folks off guard. And I don't know if it was a misquote, but it was a year or so ago, and at the time, I think it was the board member who was
Schwarzenbauer.
Yes.
We were going to be the all-electric brand.
Exactly. You know what I'm talking about.
And that freaked a lot of people out.
Yeah.
And I think, at one point it was certainly making a statement that, hey, there's a place for electrification with Mini. And I think that's true. And then, with the new Mini Electric that's coming out, the Mini SE, I do think there's some people look at that and say, well, are you guys late to the market with that? And I don't think that's necessarily the case, because I think what it is we were really trying to determine, a lot of people think about EVs, and EVs aren't necessarily always known to be sexy and fun, and, sometimes they're a bit more practical. And I think we needed to make sure that we found the right mix, because the cool thing about the Mini SE is it's a Mini. Yeah. It looks like a Mini. It drives like a Mini. And I think now that we've kind of found that, hey, you know what? Mini can fit well with electrification. So that's definitely a path we're looking at to kind of develop that in the future. We've had the PHEV Countryman. Now we've got the Cooper SE. But at the same time, we also know that those people, particularly in the U.S., we got a lot of geography in this country. Right. And there's still that desire for an internal combustion, just the feel, the sound. And then when you start looking at electrification, there's still that a bit of an unknown with some of the consumers before it really is a significant portion of the market. Yeah,
and it depends on the type of use you're getting out of the car as well. I think that right now it's a great combination of range, performance, and price. But for folks who are looking at a single car who may need to want to go away for
the only vehicle, right?
Yeah,
right.
Obviously it's a little bit more of a difficult sell in the United States.
But things like that are interesting then about, how does Mini help you play in a space where you have flexibility on what vehicles are available to you, and there's all kind of different changes in the automotive industry on people that are sharing vehicles that have flexibility on purchase options, and those are things we're looking at too to make sure we're relevant.
Yeah, I was going to ask about that. I know that there's been some dabbling in the marketplace. BMW has done that, of course. Is that something that Mini is seriously looking at? I think
we need to look at it just to make sure again that we're relevant, because there's definitely customers out there. BMW certainly seen it with the old Access by BMW program. There are people that are looking at EVs, like through our Urban X association, of funding different startups. One of them's been Borrow, and they're a company based out of LA, and they're essentially doing 3, 6, and 9 month leases of off-lease EVs, which includes some i3s, and they have some Teslas. It's kind of a smorgasbord of different products. But there's people that say, hey, I've got a particular need, or I'm going somewhere for a certain period of time, or I'm a student and I'm going to school in this area and I want a certain vehicle or access to a certain vehicle. So I think that's interesting. And then another concept we will be researching a bit is, what if you as a Mini owner wanted to have the capability and technology to share your Mini with your friends, right? And they can go take their phone and unlock your car, and it's all kind of scheduled where all your friends can access. That's kind of interesting too. Now it really promotes some of that community aspect of the brand as well. So those are definitely things that are on our radar to see what does it look like, how does it work here, and how is that a place for us to kind of expand relevance with more people.
So I want to pivot a little bit into products that you are selling now or about to sell, and thinking about bookends of the portfolio, because for the longest time we've had no electric car, we've had no high performance car. That's about to change. What do you expect? It has changed. Well, and that's true, because I just got out of the 301 horsepower Countryman JCW and Club and JCW. Let's start there. What do those two cars do for Mini?
So I think when you take JCW, and it's been interesting in the last, I don't know, 3 years. John Cooper, just the whole aspect of that aspect of the brand has always been known for the kind of the performance and the unique handling characteristics. And I think we got to a point where we were competitive in the marketplace, and it still put a decent smile on people's faces. But I think there was that thing about saying, you know what, I have a certain expectation of JCW vehicles, and I'm not quite sure we were exactly where we needed to be on some of the products. Clubman was probably one that comes to mind for a lot of people. And so now, right, you look at some of this product, and I think that what we were saying is we've got to find a way to bring back what people are expecting out of JCW. We got to bring back that overall performance. We've got to make sure the horsepower, what it sounds like, is important. And so now you have the two new JCWs. You've got the new GP, which will be kind of probably the most extreme Mini we've ever built. And that'll be coming out shortly with similar power plant in it, which is just insane in that package. Because Mini is all about fun to drive, right? Mini is about that passion for driving, and I think these products help put it back in. So some of the products in maybe the last couple of years, I'm not sure they were quite on the sweet spot.
Does that say anything about where Mini is headed from a performance standpoint in the future?
I think it's definitely saying that we always need to really promote and develop the two aspects of our brand. One of them is JCW, and that is definitely the more true performance, higher performance aspect of the brand. I mean, racing's in our blood and in our lineage, right? But then there's the other part where it still has to be fun, right? It's the advantage of having a bit of a smaller package and lighter weights and things like that it doesn't necessarily have to be 400 horsepower to be a lot of fun.
Right.
And so I think what you'll find is we will continue to ensure we're making sure the performance is what people are expecting. Throughout the entire portfolio.
Well, expectations have been raised.
Exactly.
that's for sure.
Exactly.
Again, coming out of those cars, they're decidedly faster than what was on the lots before. And I think that one of the things that is, our readers are always talking about is of course, is Mini moving away from the hatch? Is Mini getting too large, et cetera? And I know that you talked about Mini is about fun, but so the hatch I think is in a lot of ways the epicenter of the brand for a lot of folks out there. What do you say to folks who feel like you're moving away from the core product?
So I definitely would say that we're still very squarely focused on what brought a lot of people to Mini. And actually, a lot of our dealers have made the same comment that I think over the last couple of years we were very countryman for everyone, right? And there were a lot of our dealers. We've heard from customers who kind of called out. It's like, well, hey, what about the convertible and what about the hatch? And aren't those the things that kind of really made Mini? And that's very true. So I think what you'll find, we just launched this kind of new brand platform, if you will, for the Drive. It's very much focused on the entire portfolio because I think what we felt is we were really leaning into more so maybe what the segments, within the market are leaning towards, more of the SAVs and such. And so that's the countryman message. But I think what we're also finding now too is we've got to get back to, hey, people love the hatch. People like Clubman. It's everything in the portfolio. We need to let people know that, hey, this is Mini. We have an incredible offering, and will we ever, go away from the hatch and such? No. Some of the things that are maybe on our minds. A lot of people have asked the questions. On one end of the spectrum, it's like, well, will Mini ever get bigger? And I think it's an interesting question.
This is my next question, by the way.
Right? I think it's an interesting question because in the U.S. market, you can't ignore that. that is definitely where the taste of the consumers are going. So now the question is, well, how big can a Mini ever get? Mm-hmm. And so it is an interesting question. So that's one end of our spectrum. So I guess my best answer to that would be, we always got to make sure we're relevant as a brand, particularly what consumer tastes are, what their desires are. But it absolutely has to deliver upon the brand attributes. Mm-hmm. You could make that argument from a Porsche, for instance, right? Some of their top-selling vehicles now are what they've, expanded beyond what their core was, but they're still very much focused on their core. Mm-hmm. At the other end of the spectrum, we've had a lot of feedback from people saying, would you guys ever bring back? You think of some of the classic Minis. They're like, would you ever bring that back? Mm-hmm. I think that's an interesting question as well. Mm-hmm. And I think that's something we're considering too. Mm-hmm. Now, if you just said, well, wait a minute, if we look at the U.S. market, doesn't that seem counterintuitive? Mm-hmm. Because, here's X percent of the car market now, and it's, 70+% on truck and SUV. And again, if we were thinking like a small car brand, that might be more of a challenge. Mm-hmm. But if we get back to thinking like Mini, and that, how many people can walk by some of the classic Minis or some of the classic convertibles, and they look at that and they're like, how cool is that? And I would take that for a drive in a second. Mm-hmm. Well, that's because it's cool. Mm-hmm. It's because it's fun. It doesn't have to be practicable. Right. And I think those are the aspects of the brand we have to get back to, is like, we are that fun to drive brand. We are that customizable brand that helps you make this product your own. Mm-hmm. And the fact, particularly in the US, we're 83% of our owners they have 3 or 4 vehicles in the household. Mm-hmm. So that really accentuates that. Kind of some people were their primary vehicle. A lot of people were not. Yeah. And I think that continues to be where we've got to differentiate ourselves, that it's like we don't have to be the answer to everything. We just have to be the answer to being Mini, being fun, and delivering upon all those things that people have expected from us.
That's really interesting. My head is kind of thinking about all the previous Minis that I'd love to see brought back. So I think it sounds like excitement and sort of passion is in your mind really key to the future of the brand. And leaning into that. I think
it's been just in my time. I mean, I've certainly got maybe a different mindset coming into the role. My wife used to be a Mini owner, so we've had Minis in the family before. I think Bern Korber, who's the global head of Mini now, he was there when Mini came on board with BMW. And, he's now back as the head of Mini, so I think he's seen what it was. Yeah. He's seen kind of current state, and he and I are very much aligned in our thinking that it's a bit of a back to the future.
Yeah. Okay. Now, your background is pretty interesting. You've had time at Harley for a while. Yeah. How does that relate to what you're doing now? Is there anything that you find similar?
Yeah. So when I first came on board with BMW, I came on board with BMW Motorrad, right? So our motorcycle division. And the reason I got into that was BMW came to me when I was working for Harley, and I was with Harley for 10 years. Mm-hmm. And I can't tell you how many people have come to me and said, Mike, there is an incredible amount of similarities between motorcycles and kind of the power sports industry and Mini. Not necessarily automotive, but Mini. Mm-hmm. And I'm like, okay, interesting. So what makes you say that? Mm-hmm. And a lot of it is the lifestyle aspect, again, where there's a lot of people that they love their Minis. They love the community aspect of owning a Mini, the Mini wave. Mm-hmm. It's just all those things. And when you do think about the motorcycling community, they're much more tight-knit. Mm-hmm. It definitely is more of that community feel. They like customizing their products. Mm-hmm. And so when you compare that to maybe, I'll call it traditional automotive, I definitely think that there is more of that casual, comfortable feel, with Mini and motorcycles. Yeah. And so it's interesting. We've had discussions of some Motorrad dealers interested in Mini or vice versa.
That's interesting.
They'll probably see some of those sometime in the future. Mm-hmm. But that's the biggest thing for me. It's a lifestyle and community aspect that you don't necessarily see that there are maybe I don't know, a couple other automotive brands that I think that would come to mind. You could say that about, but in general, you're not going to get a bunch of F-Series owners that are all getting together on the weekend and comparing their trucks, and it's just not going to happen.
Yeah.
But it's very common for Mini, and people want to have that aspect of engaging with other owners.
What role? And I want to kind of pivot back to something you said earlier about dealers, because I know that there's been some. I think the terms optimization of the dealer network a little bit over the past 12 months or so. How do you see that changing, and what role do you see dealers having in sort of this new voice of Mini?
Yeah, I mean, dealers will continue to be the epicenter of delivering the customer experience for sure. I mean, they're the front line. Most people aren't directly interacting with corporate Mini. They're interacting with our dealers. So particularly in the U.S., just because we have a fairly sizable network, we need to make sure that we've looked at customer travel distances and convenience and how far are people willing to go to service their Mini or to buy a Mini or things like that. And so I would think in some cases, similar to any dealer network, there's some dealers that are incredibly passionate about the brand. They're very well engaged with the customers. They service the markets very well. At the other end of the spectrum, there's some dealers who for whatever reason, we need to improve their overall performance. And in other cases, we may have maybe too many dealers in an area, and dealers obviously have to be sustainable. We don't want to have a dealer here and then they're not there, and then somebody's over there. They got to have a sustainable business, and so the more we look at the makeup of the country overall, one, we got to make sure they're convenient to where the customers are. But two, we got to make sure that the way they're structuring their business, that the business is enough that it's sustainable. We do have those ups and downs in the economy and things like that.
Yeah. And I know we're at time, so last question. What are you most excited about in the next, let's say, 12 months, 18 months?
I'm excited about some of the things that I can't talk about that are in our future.
We can talk about that.
And
I won't say anything.
And I just, even though I think that there's lots to do in, as you pointed out, a very challenging market overall. It's a changing demographic. The worldwide economies, they certainly cause concern on multiple different fronts, right? So we're in very interesting times. But at the same time, from day one coming on board with Mini, I mean, I know certainly the U.S. team, and obviously as head of the Americas, I interact with, Brazil and Canada and Mexico and so on. And we got some really, really passionate teams and some very passionate dealers. So I'm excited about kind of coming in and leading the brand and kind of taking us, one, a little bit back to where we have been, but two, kind of to that next step of kind of getting us in that mode where there's more people that are like, hey, you know what, I maybe hadn't considered Mini, but now I'm thinking about it. Or, I used to be into Mini, and somewhere along the line, they must have, thought, I don't want to have as much fun anymore, or something like that.
Yeah.
Well, I want to get people back in the mode where, they're coming to us because they do want to have some fun. They've got that passion for driving. And, so I think it's going to be cool. Next phases.
Yeah, and one thing I missed, and I'll make it my true last question.
Yeah.
MTTS, Mini Takes the States.
Yes, we're excited about that. Well, we're excited about two things, actually.
Yeah.
So the first one, since we're, in the heart of Spartanburg at the moment, we're excited to make sure that we truly have Mini Performance Driving School available here in the East Coast. So we'll be bringing that to Spartanburg, and I think that's going to be awesome. We've had it out in Thermal, California. But I think it's really important to make sure we've got kind of coast-to-coast covered. So for people that want to get in and really put the cars to the paces, kind of like you had an opportunity to do, but then also to apply that with the learning environment. How do you improve your driving and all the characteristics and such? That I think is got to be really cool. Mini Takes the States. That was one thing when I came on board. I know there's all kind of blog questions, and there's all kind of fervor going on there. It's like, oh, I heard they're canceling that, or it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
And I'll tell you, I'm a firm believer that with the community aspect of the brand, that's one of the core things that we've got that a lot of other brands do not have, is that platform or that way to engage with our owners. Because it's kind of like a gathering of friends. Where we definitely want to look back on what we've done over the last 10 years or so, and to see, okay, how do we make this next one? We got to consider what parts of the country that we've covered, and at the same time, we got to make sure that it is fun as hell, and it's definitely focused on the drive and such. So I'm excited that we're bringing that back next July.
That'd be awesome.
And I know my family's excited too, so we'll probably be definitely seen all over the place and that. So
cool.
It'll be fun.
Well, thank you for your time. I appreciate it.
You betcha. Thanks for the time as well.
Yeah, excited for what's next now.
Cool. All right.
Cheers.